From Wana Brands, welcome to Enhance Your Life. I'm your host, Jonathan Small, and each week I talk to people from all sorts of professions and backgrounds about how cannabis has enhanced their lives and how this healing plant can enrich your life too. Hey everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your Life podcast. My name is Jonathan Small. Thank you so much for joining us. Very special guest today joins us from Northern California. Jason Turner is the co-founder of ThreeWells, which is the first website created specifically for mature adults who are searching for trustworthy information and education about CBD and cannabis products. And so Justin is going to talk to us about cannabis for those of us over 50. And I have to admit that I fall under this age bracket. So Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. And I guess I have to, like you, admit that I'm in that demographic myself.
It's very painful. I don't know if I'm coming out to some people at Wana right now. Sorry, Wana, if you thought that you had a youngin'. But I'm just barely over 50. Let's put it that way.
I'm gonna stay in your age group then, just barely.
We're Gen X. We are Gen Xers.
Squarely, yep.
And we don't like to, when our kids, at least my kids, call me a boomer, I'm like, no.
No.
I'm a Gen Xer. It's different. But so tell me a little bit about the origin story of ThreeWells. Why did you decide to start this website? And you are the co-founder. You have a partner on this project,
I do. My partner, Greg. Yeah. It's a long, strange journey, but one that ends in a great place. And that ironically, Greg, my co-founder, and I, we both suffered severe back pain, like debilitating back pain, where you get out of bed in the morning, you can barely move. And you know, we were good friends, and we shared with one another this back pain issue that we had, but we had very separate journeys. You know, you don't want to talk about your pain; it's kind of a downer.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be a downer every day complaining about it. So, you know, we would check in with one another, but we didn't get into detail. But what we found out, like fast forward a few years later, after, you know, knowing one another and you know, suffering separately, is we had both gone down this path of, you know, trying to avoid opioids and trying to avoid all, you know, all these things that can get you addicted to deal with your pain. And what we had turned to was cannabis. And very independently, we had both turned to cannabis. And it helped. So, you know, in our situation, we have mechanical issues, spinal issues. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't going to solve the problem, but it sure did help a lot. But during that journey of you know, discovering how to use and what to use cannabis, we discovered there's nothing out there, especially when you're over 50, when your relationship with cannabis really changes from more fun and recreation to, I need this to get through the day.
Yeah.
It's not about getting stoned. It's about, you know, just balancing your body and your life. And what we discovered was we both had so much trouble finding good, reliable, trustworthy information that was, you know, about our life stage, that we thought, you know, this is a real need. And both Greg and I had spent years in marketing and business and whatnot, building products and brands. And what we thought, this is an opportunity for us to actually do something of deep substance that's such a need in the market that's not being addressed. And candidly, people over 50, we're often forgotten, unless it's financial services. That's a different beast. But you know, only 10% of marketing dollars are going toward us, you know, 50 plus in the market overall. So it says, you know, dramatically that we're not being addressed and spoken to. But anyway, coming back to the ThreeWells story. So we decided then and there that this is something we got to do personally and for the world. And sure, you know, we're building a business and there's the business side of things, but the origin of it is so much more deep and personal for us. And by the way, good news is Greg and I actually had the exact same surgery.
Oh, wow.
And it was highly successful for both of us. And we're both about 90% pain-free. But we still use cannabis because we still have other issues. We're 50 plus, both of us. So
I have no idea what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, no, I know. It always seems like a certain body part of mine seems to start getting sore or stiff that I'm like, what is going on? And then I realize I'm just getting older. Yeah. But that's amazing that you guys have both had this sort of almost simultaneously. So tell me, what does ThreeWells offer the visitor to the site?
So the simplest way to look at ThreeWells and I don't know if the brand police are going to come chase me down, but I'm going to say it anyway because it really resonates and it's absolutely true. Is we're like the AARP for cannabis.
Mm-hmm. By the way, when you start getting your first AARP free subscription in the mail, that's a very much of a wake up call for all of us out here. Like that, I think that happens right when you turn 50, and you're like, "What?"
They hunt you down, and they know, and they found me.
Yeah. So you're like the AARP for cannabis. Okay.
We are, yeah. And to broaden on that a little bit, we really are about demystifying this whole new world of cannabis in its broadest sense, and making sure that the information and products that we bring forward to our audience are well vetted from trusted sources, and something they can rely on to do what that service and or product or person is saying they're going to actually do, and making sure to help those that want to use cannabis do it in the right, smart way. This contextualized, and I hate to use it, a business term, but it's true, like contextualizing cannabis for the life stage we're at, for, your sore shoulder or a knee or a back or something like that. It's different for us, once we hit 50. And that's one of the central things, is that we make sure that it's relevant to us over 50.
So what is the big difference? I mean, what are some of the differences? You mentioned earlier that, people who are younger sometimes use marijuana more and CBD products more for recreational purposes, just to get high and have fun, party, or chill. But you're saying the difference for 50, I mean, is there a difference in terms of dosage? Is it a difference in terms of the type of cannabis we use? Or tell us a little bit, like what changes after 50?
Okay. I'll get into what changes, but let's make sure we also cover what doesn't change. And that is, it still can be a lot of fun.
Yeah, let's face it. Yeah,
right?
We still have fun over 50. Yeah.
Exactly. We just have the money
doesn't stop.
Yeah. We just know how to do it better. That's how I look at it, right?
Yeah, right.
But the big thing is, when you hit 50, here's the thing. There's a couple of dynamics that happen when we hit 50, even when we hit 40, but we're going to focus on 50 because that's when things really sink in. Like, your eyes change when you're 43. That's the statistical reality, right? Now, can cannabis help with that? Sure, glaucoma and whatnot. But let's focus on the 50. And what happens is, it's more about our relationship and the needs of our body and our needs around our overall health, right? And there is a slight shift, in the relationship to the cannabinoids and the chemical compounds and whatnot that are in the plant and how our bodies relate to it. Sensitivity can go up a little bit. But let's come back to the biggest thing, and that is the relationship. It dramatically shifts from a want, when you're 25, 30 years old. You either want it for the THC side, the hallucinogenic side, or you look at it like taking an extra vitamin C, whether it's CBD or something else. Oh, it's an enhancement. I'm still pretty healthy and I just want to stay healthy. But when you hit 50, and this is a statistical reality, that 92% of us are taking some sort of drug for some sort of ailment. Now, that can be as minor as aspirin for an ache to something more dramatic that could be life-threatening. The point is, we're taking all these drugs, and we have this opioid crisis that I know you've covered, and we don't have to get into detail on that. But there are so many of us out there trying to avoid opioids, and there is such a great correlation and ability for cannabis to supplant opioids. And again, we don't need to get into that. But the bigger point is that we've shifted at 50 from a want to a need. We need cannabis to help balance our bodies, take inflammation down, help us sleep, blah, 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 because it's that point in our life when we really do start to suffer physically more than any other point. And cannabis has such, the full spectrum, and I'm talking terpenes and CBD and THC, the full spectrum. And we got, it's important we focus on full spectrum when we think about taking cannabis, but it really helps us balance our body so we can get through the day. And that's the neat thing. It is about taking that edge off the pain, if not completely away, or that swelling down or whatever it may be, so that we can live the lives that, one, we've worked hard to this point in our life to be able to do, and two, that we really want to. And we have the cognitive and most of the physical ability, and cannabis helps give that back. So that's sort of the biggest point. But then there is some studies that indicate that our bodies do get a little more sensitive to cannabis as we get older. And so, and we got to be careful because you know how studies go in the cannabis industry, they're kind of all over the place. But
Right.
the general aggregation is that we do have a little bit more sensitivity. So, the old glass, go low and start slow, acronym holds especially true for us. And also when you consider that so many of us at 50 plus are taking other drugs, whereas when we're 30, we're probably not, that you have to be careful when you're taking cannabis, and talk to your doctor and make sure that you're informing your doctor, hey, if you're going to give me X drug, I also like to take cannabis. So how does that mix? And unfortunately, a lot of doctors don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a real problem. And that's another reason that, we have a medical advisor at ThreeWells.
Dr. Debbie. Yeah.
And she really does get into, okay, here's where you need to be careful when you're combining drugs in your system.
So I'm looking at the site. First of all, what talked about the origin of the name ThreeWells?
Oh yeah. So Greg and I were sitting and we were talking about, what are we really about? What are we wanting to do here? And it came down to three things. We want to be well, live well, and do well.
Mm-hmm.
And, quite simply, that's where it came from. We want to be well physically and mentally, and cannabis in all its glory and power helps us do that. So being well enables us to live well. So live a good life and live a happy, joyful, active life. Man, that sounds old when I say that. I don't mean to sound that old. And then the do well part is so that we can go out in the world and do well, whether that's, just with our nuclear family or, for the entire planet. Yeah, but we're enabled physically and mentally to go out and do those things and have that positive impact.
It also really sounds like a nice Tony retirement community in like Hawaii, the ThreeWells retirement community.
John, ironically, when we named the company, we had to be careful because there's a big distillery called ThreeWells. So we didn't.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So the site is basically broken up into like you mentioned, Dr. Debbie has a column and she gives advice on some medical questions that you have. You have an educate yourself, so there's a lot of content. But then you have this shopping section, where you recommend products. And so do you review all the products that are on your site?
So let's be specific about review. So do we review the products before we put them on our site that they're in fact what they say they are, and they're not? We're really careful about where those products come from as far as manufacturing, because there's so many companies out there still using high doses of pesticides and things like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
We review the products and the companies internally, and we say, okay, are your claims correct? Do we see all your certificates, your COAs, to make sure they've been lab tested? We go through all of that, and we review the company. Are you a legit company? You're not doing things in China and saying it's US based, et cetera. So in that way, we review them. When it comes to more of the public reviewing, that's something we're actually starting. I'll be doing some videos. We have a couple out already. Dr. Debbie did a couple where we actually review the product. So, we'll talk about packaging and the ingredients, and I'll be taking, or others on the ThreeWells team will be taking the product and making sure it does what it claims to do, especially in the gummy world. I mean, that one's so popular, but there's sprayed gummies versus, it's actually made with the ingredients inside the gummy and not just sprayed over top, because that can dosage levels can go up and down so dramatically when people do that. So we make sure that you get the effect that you're looking for.
Right. And I should put a little plug in here that you do have Wana. So you've vetted Wana brands, which is not just because I happen to host their podcast, but actually is a very good edibles brand. It tastes good, et cetera. But anyway, I won't get into a whole commercial for Wana here, but I do see that they're on there.
You bring up a good point, John, and that is, Wana is one of the best companies out there. And again, it's not a plug because we're completely independent at ThreeWells. And the reason that we're working with Wana's on the site, because they are great. And we vetted that. So, what you say is absolutely spot on.
When you're looking at this demographic, and by the way, it's not like everything. I mean, I'm thinking like Gen X probably has different needs than boomers. And then we get to the greatest generation, whatever it is, like as we go further and further, if we get a little bit older, And so do you think even this is kind of almost a too wide demographic to like, is that challenging? Because what might be true for somebody who's 52 is different than somebody who's 82.
Yeah, you know what? Physically and the relationship to the plant stay pretty consistent. Where things deviate and we do have to adjust is perception. Once you hit that 65 and older mark, that stigma of, cannabis is going to get you hooked on heroin and you're going to end up in the streets and homeless thing is so embedded in the psyche of people 65 plus that they're really working hard to get over that. People in that 50 to 65 range actually are much more malleable and open to it. And this is crazy but true. Their biggest obstacle right now, once they get over the stigma for themselves, is talking to their kids about this. And that's one thing we try to help a lot with, and we've advised on and we write articles about, is how to talk to your older teen or adult kids that you're going to start taking cannabis in some form.
Well, can you give me a few tips of, my kids are a little younger, they're 15. And of course I work for Green Entrepreneur. I run a website that's all about cannabis. So they're used to me getting deliveries of cannabis all day long. So it's not totally shocking to them. But what advice do you give when somebody is starting to take cannabis, maybe for their pain or, and your kids are kind of wondering, why does it smell like a Fish concert in my house today? What are some of the advice we give to talk to kids about it?
Yeah. So I had that conversation with my son first when he was 15, that, I was getting into the cannabis industry, and the best advice and the most effective advice is to just be plain with it and not try to, sugarcoat or dance around it. And the correlation we made, my wife and I, was we take ibuprofen and we take other medications. This is just like that. But the added benefit is that it's natural. And then after we had the medical conversation, because if you start with medical and you don't start with the hallucinogenic side, it adds a lot of credence and validity to the plant. And you explain to your kid, hey, listen, this is the medical benefits of this plant. And yes, oh, by the way, it is a hallucinogenic. And that's okay too, because what the correlation my wife and I made were, it's like having a couple of glasses of wine or a glass of scotch, and you can't hide alcohol and drugs from your kids. That's a fool's errand. So we were very plain with them. Sometimes we're going to take cannabis and it'll be more for the THC side, which is very much like us having a couple of glasses of wine. And then we stressed, it doesn't matter if it's alcohol or cannabis, you have to stay in control and moderate yourself. And we talked to him about moderation and how that all works. And then we took the next step. And this is another important step, and that is to decouple cannabis from hard drugs, which happens far too often because of the media. And it's important for us to decouple it for our kids and say, look, heroin and meth and all those are chemical-based, man-made products that are developed to be insanely intense. Mother Nature doesn't do that. And Mother Nature developed cannabis, which is a very mild thing that works naturally and we explain the endocannabinoid system, just like a digestive system, to our son. And he got it because he took grade school biology.
Yeah. It seems to me that you would almost have a similar conversation with somebody over 65 that might be, like we mentioned, the stigma and might have a kind of a bias against cannabis going in, to sort of take that medical medicine approach first. Talk to me a little bit about talking to somebody older who might be kind of curious, but is also, a child of the 60s and saw some crazy stuff go down.
Yeah, the thing that works best when we talk to people, in that age group is we go back to what they all knew when they were, in their 20s and their teens. In that whole era, there was a lot of focus on natural substances, whether it be fabrics or foods or whatever. And so the best way we find to help people 65 plus is to talk about the systems in your body. And we talk about the lymphatic system or the digestive system or the nervous system. These are all systems that require certain things to help them be healthy and be balanced. And we say, we'll talk to them about, and remember when you were 20 and you were very much, into the yoga scene, or you were very much into natural foods and organics and, not eating meat or whatever it may have been. Well, cannabis is on that same level. It just got politicized and it got, marketed in bad ways for bad reasons. Then we start to talk about the endocannabinoid system. And we say, listen, did you know there are cannabinoids in mangoes and chrysanthemums and black pepper? And the reason they're in there and the reason we have an endocannabinoid system is because it is one of the biggest, most important balancing systems in our body. Kind of like the pituitary gland balances so much, or your thyroid, your endocannabinoid system does the same. And if we weren't meant to have cannabinoids, we wouldn't have an endocannabinoid system. So in fact, by taking in cannabinoids through cannabis, you're actually feeding a system that is required by our bodies to live healthy, happy, joyful lives.
For people who are, have concerns about taking cannabis over 50, would you say the biggest concern is the psychoactive proponent, the fear of being too high? I don't think that older people have the fear as much of like, is the next thing heroin after I take cannabis? but more the fear of the feeling of being high. Certainly that's an experience that I have personally. Like I don't like being too high. So I wonder if that's similar with other people, or they had a terrible edible experience, when they were 22 years old, somebody gave them a brownie and they never want to go there again.
Well, I got a good story on that one for you. So assuming they've gotten over the stigma side, which is usually blocker number one. So we'll assume they've gotten over that. Then they get to, and you're spot on, Jonathan, is that quite often they'll say, well, I don't want to be out of control. I don't want to be, just like I don't want to be too drunk. I don't want to be too high. And I, say to them, look, do you sit down and take one sip of wine and worry you're going to be too drunk? No. If you sit down, you take 4 glasses or even just 4 glasses of wine, then you're going to be really, it's the same thing with cannabis. You just have to know what to take. And this is why we stress so much. Start with 5 milligrams, just 5 milligrams. Now, I alluded to just a second ago, I'll tell you a story. I'll take 10 seconds, 20 seconds, to tell you a really quick story. And this is one story that has happened repeatedly. We had some neighbors over and they're open-minded about cannabis. And I had some gummies and some chocolates, and actually was, some of it was Wana, and then the chocolates I think were Kiva. And I said, do you want to have some wine or do you want to have some cannabis in the form of edibles? And they said, well, let's skip the wine tonight. We'll do the edibles, because they weren't very experienced with the edibles. And I said, okay, now the thing here is you're going to have one piece. It's going to be 5 milligrams, and it's the only piece you're going to get for an hour. So we're going to just sit and chill for an hour. My wife included in this, by the way. My wife and our neighbors were like, okay, yeah, sure. You're being the doting parent over us, whatever. So I gave them each a piece, and I put the chocolate bar down on the table, and I went to the bathroom, and I came back and I saw the chocolate bar was gone. And I said, please tell me you all did not eat the chocolate. Well, yeah, we weren't feeling anything. I said, it's been 10 minutes.
Oh, God.
And they had each ingested about 20 milligrams.
They did the big mistake. They
didn't listen. And they started feeling, really buzzed. And then it was the end of the night and they wanted to go home. And they lived across the street so they could walk. No one's taking drugs and driving. And the next day I get a call, and it was, what the hell did you do to us? I said, they said, we have never been so high. And it was fun, but it was too much. What did you do? I said, you took more than the 5 milligrams that I had told you should only take. You took 20, you took 4 times. So it's like drinking 5 glasses of wine and expecting not to get drunk. Yep.
It's the mantra of this podcast. And really, honestly, Nancy Whiteman is the one who said it to me, and she's the CEO of WANA. But, start low, go slow. It sounds so simple, and that's because it is. But, especially with edibles, we've talked about this, like you've got to wait at least an hour, even with the fast acting edibles, because you just don't know. And everybody's different. And I mean, 5 milligrams sounds smart to me. I had a 5 milligram cookie, I don't know, a year ago. And I thought I think it was more than 5 because I had the cookie. Couldn't even remember that I ate the cookie. Like it was unconscious. I just ate the cookie, and then I was working, and all of a sudden it just kicked in. And literally as it kicked in, this was more than a year ago because it was when my kids were younger. As it kicked in, my wife was out for the day. The kids came home, and I was like, oh my God. And I had to pull it together for like 3 hours before my wife came home. I didn't want to tell her because she'd just get mad at me, But that probably was a 10 milligram. But anyway, I was crazy because I ate the whole cookie, and I probably should have just nibbled on like a piece. That's the difference between booze and pot, is that people, booze, you get there's a lot of differences, but booze you can get, you feel it pretty quickly, so you kind of know what you're getting into. But with cannabis, sometimes it takes a minute. And we've talked about when you digest it, you get even, goes through your liver, you can get even more high.
Yeah, and an important thing for anyone listening is you need to read the label on the packaging, because there are newer products now, and Wana has, Wana Quick, and there are other products coming out that are faster acting.
Yep.
You need to know how fast it's going to react with your body or act inside your body, so that can or should you take some more if you're not getting the results you're after. So that's why I'm stressing, read what it says on the bottle.
I guess that's the second mantra, read the label. Yeah, don't just put anything into your body. And go to ThreeWells website. So if somebody was just listening to this, they should go to ThreeWells.co, right?
Correct.
And what would you recommend? Like, what's the process? You're new to cannabis. You're new to your site. What would you recommend the sort of process of engaging with your site?
So what we see a lot of, and I recommend not to do, I know you asked me what to do, but so many people defy what we say to do. So I'm going to say what not to do. And that is jump right into the products. That's like, going to Scotland and walking into the best distillery for Scotch and sticking your head in a barrel and saying, oh, great. I've had some, you're out of control. You don't know what you're doing. And it could be not a good experience. Are you going to get harmed? Highly unlikely. I mean, cannabis, you can't OD on cannabis. That's the thing.
It's nice.
You can, drink yourself to that point, but you can't do that with cannabis. Anyway, going back to what you were asking me of what they should do. So on the site, we have, cannabis 101s broken up in all kinds of different ways. We have, all about the plant 101, all about ingesting cannabis and the different ways to do that, from smoking to edibles to, whatever it may be. Those are the areas you start in, is to really understand Cannabis 101, and that's what it's called on the site. And it's a consumer guide, and then get into the plant a little bit, so you know the difference between THC and CBD and terpenes and all those other things, because they are important. And then the last thing is, we just recently put out a video that walks you through a dispensary. One of the dispensaries that we have a relationship with is East of Eden. And so what we did is we did it from, a lot of it's the POV, your personal POV, but it gives you a good overview of what to expect going into a dispensary. And the reason I'm spending a little bit more on that one, John, is that people have this strange relationship with a dispensary if they've never been in one. They think it's this drug den, and they're going to walk into purple haze, and
right.
There's all kinds of drug paraphernalia and stone people trying to help you out. It's not the case in any professional and modern dispensary. So we want to dispel those notions. And so we put this out so that you know exactly what to expect when you go in. And it takes the nervousness away. I got to tell you, the first time I went into a dispensary, I felt like I was 21 again, and going into my first liquor store. Like, I'm going to be arrested for being in here. Someone's going to find out. I'm going to go into a database, blah, 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 blah. And in fact, that's not the case. So we wanted to dispel all that, so that you really need to start there, so you're well educated.
That's great. So it's ThreeWells.co, and it's really, there's so much information there, so much resources. I think it's a great place to start for those who have experience with cannabis, or those who are just kind of curious and hearing a lot about it and want to jump into it. Thank you so much, Jason, for taking the time to talk to us today.
Oh, thank you. It's been great. You're a fantastic host, and I appreciate it.
Enhance Your Life is brought to you by Wana, the #1 infused product in the U.S. Wana's entire process is designed to deliver the same great experience time after time. They have spent years fine-tuning their recipes so that their products are delicious, consistent, and potent. For more information, check out WanaWellness.com. That's Wana, W-A-N-A, wellness.com.